Cool. Okay. Everything's going. We're recording. Hi, guys. Welcome to video number 2. We're going to talk about your new project today. And it's got a little bit to it. There's a lot of new features that we're going to start utilizing in Illustrator. And we have to go over some of them before you can really be successful in doing stuff. Okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about what this new transition is into a different sort of digital pathway, essentially. I think I've talked a bit before about how there's many different aspects of commercial design, and one of them being graphic design as a career choice is very different from stuff like animation and concept art. So what we've been doing in class is very different from what we're going to be doing in a class. If it's not for you, which a lot of people find graphic design to be a little bit less interesting than concept art or visual development, graphic design is definitely more along a aesthetic pursuit. I think you guys will still enjoy it because it's cool, it's fun. You get to make cool looking stuff. It's not necessarily story driven. It's more, as we're about to find out, driven by emotion and feeling. So let's go over real quick. We're gonna try to get this video as fast as possible so I don't take up all the time in your class. And here we are. So first thing we're gonna talk about is something called branding. Branding is identity. So this right here, this word, if you ever hear this word in a context, is identity. Okay. Any company, they're going to want to have an identity, all right? And most companies pay a lot of money to get a really unique identity. So if you think of something like, a skate company, or I don't know, like MMA fighting equipment, or a jewelry company, or a perfume company, they all sort of have a feeling that they want attributed to their business, okay? And as graphic designers and advertisers, the job of those people, and what you guys are going to be experiencing as well, is to facilitate the feeling that they want into a visual format, okay? So I have a really dumb example here. I have the phrase word party time, and this has something called connotation with it. And connotation is like the emotions that we get from words when we think about them. So if I say something like war, everybody's going to have their own feelings of it, whether you think war is interesting and you think about the history, or you've experienced something with war and you understand how devastating it is. It doesn't matter. The word itself can derive many different feelings in many different kinds of people. So party time, as stupid as it is, has that sort of same thing as well. There's connotation to it. So everybody's going to look at party time and they're going to think of different things. And as a company, we don't want that. That's a no-no. We don't want people to read this and have a different emotion than what we want them to experience. So as a graphic designer, we can control that. We can manipulate people into having the connotation, the feeling that we're asking them to have, okay? So we can use that by using type, font. And there's a lot of different ways we can express certain feelings, okay? So all these 3 words right here, they're the same phrase, the same set of words, but they all have a different feeling, okay? So this one here is definitely goofy. It's definitely something that's supposed to be lighthearted and interesting and a little, childish, and it feels that way, right? This is something I could totally, see on like a party business, like Party City kind of stuff, This has got that feeling of good times, safety, excitement, that kind of stuff, okay? This one here says party time, but it's in this really poorly designed type, but it still functions what I'm asking it to do. And that is to be a counter to what you're saying. So party time has initially that, like I said, the connotation of having something happy and fun happening. I know this is hard to read, but the type is saying something completely different. So it gives you a sense of edge, like a feeling of like, oh, something's not right. And if that's what your company wants, if they want that feeling of offness, this expression of that phrase is exactly what you're looking for. And then this one here is a little more classy and timeless. I get 1920s, speakeasy vibes from this type. And you can manipulate people into feeling certain ways, right? So you can give them a connotation just by choosing a particular type. And this is exactly what branding is, okay? So what you guys are going to be doing now for your project is a logo design. And logo design is one aspect of branding. It's one little piece of a large group of different activities and jobs, essentially, in branding to achieve that for a company. And the company that you guys are going to be working for is yourself. You guys are essentially, as artists, independent workers. You're people who have a product, your art, and you're trying to sell it to either a company or you're going to sell it to individual people. And this is something hopefully you get into in the future after you graduate from high school, or maybe you go to college, you can do it too. But it's, you have to eventually learn how to run your own private business, even if you work at a studio or you are self-employed as a freelancer. So you're going to create your own logo for this class. This is your project, okay? And I'm going to talk about logo design right now. We're going to talk about the importance of what certain things are and what graphic design is, okay? So let's talk about graphics real quick. Graphic design is exactly what it sounds like. You're taking a graphic, which is an abstract shape, and you're designing with it. And the way we put those things together can have different feelings and emotions. So I really like this one here. This is a very simple scene, very simple shapes, simple colors, but it totally provides a feeling. It provides an experience that this logo wants you to have, okay? And I like it. I feel comfortable. I feel excited to go camping. I feel excited to go hiking and just be part of this whole scene. I have this nice image of a wonderful mountain scene, forest with a river. It's just good vibes all around. This one here is a really simple example of just having a name with some pretty stuff going around it. And this is really simple to make. You guys can do this in 30 minutes. It's just 2 fonts, some lines and circles, and a color choice. And it's got a connotation. It's got a feeling. This looks very crafty, very well designed. It's just, and as a photographer, a lot of photographers are graphic designers as well. It's just supposed to give you that sense of I know what I'm doing. I know what looks good, and look at my logo. It tells you exactly that. This one here, this is a very simple one too. It's cool because it has shapes within shapes, okay? And it kind of tells you exactly what this is. You don't even have to know what the company name is other than Anderson. It doesn't have to say construction or fabrication or building. This logo does that job for you, right? There's a hammer and a house. There's not really a lot of different jobs that people with hammers have to do with houses, whether they're tearing them down or building them. It's kind of the same stuff. So a very simple, fast, expressive way to demonstrate what the brand is, what the job is. This one here is very boring. I didn't like this logo a lot, and I wanted to show you guys how this has very little to do with what the company is. And company name, this is like an example logo just to demonstrate somebody's ability to make a logo. But this is, it doesn't tell a lot. It doesn't tell a lot of story. There's no emotion or feeling. It's just interesting shapes and like a graphic-y book and a graphic-y sun. And it doesn't have that sense of brand that we're asking for. There's no feeling involved with it. Now you might have your own feelings when you look at this, but it's not directed, right? It's not immediate. It doesn't do one of these, right? It doesn't do something like this where I'm immediately getting a sense of what the company is supposed to be doing. I like this one a lot because this is actually sort of what I'm going to be asking you guys to be accomplishing with your project this time. I want you guys to do a very simple logo, very, very simple, with your initials, okay? So this person's initials are A and T, and then they have a little crown on the top, and it's very well designed. It's got this nice, simple, pointed, centered piece. It's even, so it'll stand up really well in like a nice symmetrical space, and I think it looks nice, Probably didn't take this person very long to make, but it doesn't need to. One thing you guys will see is unlike illustrating, or unlike visual development and concept art and animation, you can get very quality stuff pretty quickly as a graphic designer. But because of that, you're expected to do a lot more design. And so it's a different kind of a workflow. But yeah, this is a great example. If you guys want to look at an example of what I'm asking you to do, this is literally the perfect example of it. And this is another nice one too. This is just a very simple shape design with a simple design in the middle. It doesn't need to be flashy, and you can have your name in there too. A lot of times people will attribute a symbol with their work. I want you guys to, if you're going to do a symbol, make sure it also has your initials in there as well. It can't just be a symbol, because there's only one person really that I can think of that has a successful symbol for a name, and it's that artist formerly known as Prince. I don't really see anybody else doing that, and I don't think that you guys will be able to accomplish the same deal. Okay, so put your name in it, and until you get so famous you don't need a name anymore, yeah, always make sure that people know who the name is of the people they're looking at. Okay, so this is logo design. These are some examples of logo design. I'm going to have this document for you guys ready, so you can open it up and take a look at all of the stuff and steal some of these for inspiration. You can take a look at how everything is, and yeah, we're gonna start going into features. That was just a quick intro. Okay, so we're running at, how long are we on right now? Quite a bit of time. We're gonna move on. So this is my little free space of work, and we're gonna get started on just some of the features. Okay, so the first big thing, and the first most important thing that you have to understand for Illustrator, is how to manipulate objects in Illustrator. Because remember how we talked about how this is just a big field of, like it's a big desk, and you have like a lot of little pieces of paper kind of laying around and words and stuff like that. You need to know how to move them around and iterate with them and move them around and stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to move things around. So I'm going to quickly just make some shapes. I'm going to show you guys how to do this in a second, so we really understand. And I kind of showed you this in the last one too. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So there's two ways to manipulate objects in Illustrator, okay? And that's because there's two sort of required types of manipulation, all right? So the first one we have up here at the very top of the toolbar, we're gonna make our way down when we do this, is the selection tool, okay? And you're familiar with this in Photoshop. We have the same thing. V is the hotkey, gets you this selection tool, and this lets you grab things and move them around. Okay, and it's pretty simple as that. You can also grab the bounding box and stretch things. You can resize them. Okay, so it's simple stuff, right? But where it gets interesting is the next tool, which is the white cursor just below this. This is called the direct selection tool, and this one is very specific because not only can it do what the selection tool can do, but the direct selection tool is meant to manipulate the vectors. And if you guys remember from the first video, vectors are the coordinates that the math uses to plant little corners and edges. This lets you actually grab lines, like whole lines between two vectors, individual vectors, or whole shapes. Now, this doesn't let you grab multiple things. Like I can't click and drag and grab multiple objects like this. But if I go back to the selection tool, I click and drag multiple objects, I can grab both of them. So they both have their means of using. And so V is the selection tool, and the A is the direct selection tool, and it lets you manipulate and grab things. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the shape tool. So our shape tool is this one down here, and M is the default. If you hit M, it's going to bring you to create a shape. And the first shape it's going to want you to make is a square. You can also hit L, and L is a ellipse, not a circle, an ellipse, okay? Because an ellipse lets you make ovals and makes vertical, horizontal ovals, stuff like that. Now, in order to create shapes, you have to click and drag, okay? So sometimes that can be a pain because I could be trying to be like, okay, I really want a square to be right on the corner of this piece. Here, we'll start with this. I want a perfect square to be on the corner of this, so I have to kind of guess and try to make it. And I'm like, okay, I gotta say like, oh, that's a perfect square. You can really quickly do that by holding Shift to create a perfect square, okay? And if you hold Shift and Alt at the same time and you click on the corner or click on a spot where you want your object to be centered on, and you click and drag there, it'll create your shape from that point. So remember, this is Shift with Alt at the same time. You find your spot that you want to be centered on the shape, and then you can click and drag, okay? Otherwise, it's going to drag from your initial point of selection, okay? You can, of course, select multiple objects at the same time, just like I'm doing, okay? And then you can delete them if you don't want them. Yeah, I'm hitting just the delete on the keyboard or the backspace, okay? You can also, with the direct selection tool, grab the vectors of the shape and delete those too, and then you can just get lines, or you can grab specific vectors and get that. But the problem is, and you guys are about to see this, we're gonna lose the shape when you do that. And we'll talk about the next thing we're going with is the stroke and fill feature here. So everything in Illustrator requires itself to be a shape. And a shape means it's essentially a container. There's an interior of a shape and an exterior of a shape, right? Illustrator can make things that look like shapes, but they're not technically shapes. And the reason that this is important is because a lot of the features require things to be shapes. And in a little bit, I'll show you what sort of features require this. Okay, so you're asking me, like, what does that mean? If I click one of these shapes, I'm gonna click on the green rectangle first, and I go over to fill. This lets me choose the color on the interior, okay? I can go and choose whatever color I want, and you can even click on the palette here and customize specifically. And you guys can see my color gamut is in CMYK. That's because it's set up for print. You guys can always go up here and go to RGB and set your colors up to screen colors, make it nice and easy for you. But yeah, so I find the color that I want, all right? And let's say, like, I don't want everything to be a shape necessarily. I don't want it to be filled with anything. You can also click on this, and there's a little white box with a red slash through it that says none. You click on that, and now it's empty. There's nothing in there, but the shape is still there technically. But you're wondering, like, well, what's the point of that? I don't see my shape. You can go to stroke, and you can see over here just underneath fill, there's an area for stroke. If you click on this little button, it's going to start creating a line that is the literal outline of your shape. Now the stroke is not a shape. It's if you look here, just an extra little space, a thickness to the line that the shape is made of, okay? So if I try to click on this, you're not going to get anything. You have to select it. And you can see, like, how we have on normal shapes, these corners here don't have vectors. That's because, like I said, they're not a shape. It's just a thickness to the line, okay? But yeah, this will act like a normal box. There's no interior though, so if you try to grab it and move, you're not going to really get far. So you got to kind of hover near that edge. You see I'm sort of having a little bit of an effort with it. You got to hover, and you can see there's a little box that is underneath the selection cursor. If you click on that, or if you have that while you click, that is saying, like, okay, yeah, you're clicking a box, you're clicking a shape. That's nice. Okay, so you can do this with literally any shape. It doesn't matter what it is. You can have, if you look up here, you can grab this guy. I'll show you how to do that in a sec. I've just turned all of these letters into shapes, and you can see here they're made up of a bunch of different vectors. Each one can be manipulated and moved around. Okay, and they also are filled. If you want to, you can take this and you can fill each shape as its own thing. Okay, you can fill everything simultaneously with the same stuff by just clicking all of it and filling it in. If you want to change the stroke color, you just have to click on the little box where we had the fill, and then underneath it is the stroke. You can click the color here and you can change everything. Okay, be wary about making your stroke too thick though, because as you can see, after a little while it just sort of takes over, and then Illustrator doesn't really know what to do with what you're asking it to do. It'll still do it, it just doesn't understand what you're asking it to do. Okay, yeah, and then there's stroke options. If you click on the little line, the dotted line underneath here, it'll give you different ways to have your stroke make sense. So if we go to like a little corner here, see how we have a sharp edge, this sharp corner here? If I click on stroke and then I go over to cap or corner or a line stroke, we have different ways that this will work. So if we go to cap, if there's an end point on a line, and I'll show you that in a second, it'll change how the cap of that end point is. And so you can have a round, a butt, or projecting. corner. This will make more sense right now. So right now we have a little corner. If I go to these round join corners, it'll round off the edges. Or if you go to a beveled, it'll like cut off the edges. So you can have different styles of things and make your stuff look really cool. If we keep going and we look at the rest, there's going to be a line stroke. So right now, your stroke is going to start from the middle line and make its way out in both directions, on the inside of the shape and the outside. But you can align it so it either works only just on the inside of the shape and the outside of your line doesn't have anything, or you can have it work the opposite way and go to the exterior of your shape. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to play with how you want this to be expressed. And like I said, if you just want to get rid of stuff, like let's say you've made a shape on accident and you can't, you don't want these things, you just click on this box here with the color, go to the shape with the white and the dash through it, click it, and it just gets rid of the stroke, or it gets rid of the fill, okay? So that is shapes, that's stroke, that's fill. Now we're going to talk about the thing I was telling you about, how everything in Illustrator needs to be a shape for it to make sense. So if you look here, this looks like a shape. It looks like a triangle. It's not a right triangle, right? But it looks like there's 3 corners. There's 1, 2, 3, okay? This is not a shape technically though. So if I go and I click onto the direct selection tool, as you can see, we have, one line here. We have one line here, but if I go click over here, there's no line. And that's because there's a missing line between this point, this vector, and this vector. And you're probably wondering, like, what is it's connecting? It shows me. Let's add a stroke so you can tell. We'll add a stroke, make it nice and big, and you can see, oh, just that one, these 2 lines right here are making this here, and the fill is connecting the last empty bits. And if I get rid of the fill, you'll see what it truly is. It's just an angled line, okay? This will not do some of the stuff that we want it to do. This will not have some of the feature-rich options that we're asking it to have. Right now, this is just 2 lines that are connected by 1 point, and I can grab these 2 vectors, move them around, and it's not doing everything that I'm asking it to. Oh, and if we go back here to the stroke options and I go to the cap, you can see, gotta select these. Go to the stroke, hit the cap, it'll change both of them to a nice round one. If you click on just one vector though, you can change that one vector. Oh, it's not doing it right now. I gotta check out the solutions. I'll go and fix that for you guys. You should just be able to grab one vector at a time and change how it's reading, but for some reason mine's not doing it. I'll figure out how to do it for you guys in a bit. But yeah, you can go and manipulate the lines the same way you do shapes, but they will not fill and work with some of the features we're going to show you. So first off, let me show you how to make something like this though, without having to make a shape and delete it, okay? The next tool we're going to use, there's 2 of them that are very useful. We have above our shape tool, rectangle, there's the line segment tool. So you can click on this and you can make a line. You can just click and drag and it makes a nice line. You can rotate the line, okay? But it doesn't make a continuous line. So if you guys see, I'm not going to be able to click, 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 and click and make one continuous line with a bunch of different angles, okay? The way to do that is to use the pen tool. So if I go to this one right here, you can see it's like an old school pin nib called the pen tool. This one lets you click and create vectors. And you can see right now I've clicked only once, and the tool is asking me, okay, where do you want the next line, or where do you want the next vector to be? And this is what the line is going to be like in between those. So I've clicked and I've added one vector, and if I click again, it's going to create a line segment for me. And as you can see, it's asking me once again, where do I want to go? I'm going to click again, create a line segment. Okay, so I can create geometric edges and shapes by doing this, but to actually create a shape, I have to go from where my origin was, the first part I started from my endpoint, and I got to hover over that spot, and you can see there's a little circle underneath the pin nib edge right there. That's saying, okay, I'm going to close this shape for you. And you click it, and now you officially have a shape, and as you can see, it's no longer asking where the next line segment's going to go, okay? So you have a new custom shape. You can customize it as much as you want. But you're probably wondering, okay, what if I want to have something that's not geometric like this? I want something a little more angular. The pen tool also works by clicking and dragging. So if I create a line, I made a dot, create a line. If I click and then I drag, as you can see, it's going to create 2 little winglets that allow me to create a curved line. And as I'm clicking and dragging, the further I drag away, the more severe that goes. As I turn it, it's going to wrap it sort of around the vector that I asked it to do. And you can get some really cool stuff. And if you click and let go, it's going to create a line segment, and the next line segment is going to be curving off of that. There's going to be a direction. And you can see it's because this little winglet right here, it's going straight out. It's expecting you to follow the direction that the winglet's going. So I can go ahead and click and drag, and now I've got this good little smooth curve. But let's say I don't want there to be an angle here. I don't want this next line coming off this to be curved. I can go ahead and hold Alt, and that's going to hold and create this little curve manipulation cursor. If I click on this, it's going to turn off the next curve, and then I can get a straight line again. Okay, so you can do some pretty neat stuff with it. You can create wonderful looking graphics really quickly. If you also hold spacebar while you're clicking and dragging, you'll be able to move the vector, so you can finally get like, I kind of want it to be more like this, a little more of an angle like that, get a little closer, okay, and voila. And I'm going to click, hold Alt, click on that, and I'm going to close this shape. And now I've got an interesting, funky, unique shape, okay? But then you're like, what if you really want your stuff to be adjusted afterwards? Let's say maybe this curve is not as severe as you want it to be. If you go to the direct selection tool and you click on a vector, as you can see, the winglets of those curves that you have are going to be visible. And then you can grab, using the direct selection tool, these little winglets and manipulate it after the fact. And you can click and drag and pull, and you can add a little bit more severity or a little less severity. You can also hold Alt while you're in this little mode, and you can click and drag and change the direction that the winglets go. So now I can create more interesting, fun shapes. So I imagine you guys are going to want to rewatch this part a lot, because there's a lot of stuff going on with the pencil. I'm going to say that just like in Photoshop, how the brush tool is the sort of bread and butter of everything that's possible within Photoshop, in Illustrator, the pen tool is everything that's possible within it. There is a brush tool here in Illustrator, but it doesn't work the same way you're expecting it to work. It creates line segments that are curved. All right, so if we click on this and look, it's a line segment with a bunch of little vectors inside. I'm going to choose a color so you can tell a little bit better. There's a bunch of little vectors in here. If I click, you can see they have their little winglets that you can go and manipulate and adjust. But as you can see, this isn't a shape. It's a line segment. And if you paint and try to draw with a bunch of these line segments, you're going to have a really bad time. It's not going to be easy to use some of the features we're asking to do. So we're going to get rid of that. There's also the blob brush tool. This lets you make big blobs of shapes. Like I can make a big blobby circle-y shape. And if I get really close and I click on the direct selection tool, you can see all the different vectors that are made up. And oh, just a quick warning too, just a heads up. All these vectors, these are data points, okay? This is data that Illustrator and your computer needs to pay attention to. The more of these you have, the more of a burden your computer is going to take on, and that's just going to give you a bad time. You're going to struggle, okay? So try to use as few little vector points as you possibly can. That's why this technique kind of doesn't work that well, especially on the computers you guys have in class. All right, and then one thing you also have surely noticed is that there's also these little like little circles at the corners. You see this one here, if I go zoom out, it'll kind of get out of the shape. See this little circle right here? If I use the selection tool and I click and drag that, then I can turn this into more of a pill shape, and I can really manipulate specifically corners and edges, okay? But yeah, this is pretty much all I want to say about shapes, about the pencil, and that's it for now for that. We're going to talk about the type tool, and the type tool is going to be, and some of you guys I know have already used it in Photoshop. The type tool is in Photoshop a pain. It's terrible, it doesn't work well, and that's because Photoshop, like I said before, isn't built to use vector stuff, okay? And vector graphics are what are needed for type. So to use the type tool, we can go over here and you can see the little T, or you can click T on the keyboard and it'll bring you to the type tool. You can click and drag and make a bounding box for your type. And if you click and drag and you let go, you're gonna get a filled in box full of this stuff called lorem ipsum. This is literally Latin, and it's just a bunch of gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of random Latin words, okay? And it's just to help you, make sense of what you're doing. So I've got this little area, like let's say I don't know what I'm gonna write in here yet, but I still want it to look nice. You can understand what's being in there. And if you look, we're in the properties panel over here, as you can see. You can click on this, and you look over here on the right. Down here, character has shown up, and you can see there's a lot of options for the type that you're using. There's also paragraph, and if you guys have ever used Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you're probably familiar with what this means. Lining type and bullets and numbering, like this is stuff that a Word document would have. So you should be pretty familiar with how this works. This right here is like the size of your type. You can click on it, and it'll go down by individual points. As you can see, it'd be murder if like I came out and this is a size 12 font. See how tiny that is? If you guys hold shift and you click on these buttons, it's gonna go by increments of 10, so it goes much faster, so you can kind of figure out how big you want everything to go. This here is called leading, and leading is the space between your lines. Most of the time you want there to be enough space to make sense, and the default leading for most of the type that you guys have in here is gonna be perfectly fine. This right here is called kerning, and kerning is the space between objects, and you should just keep it on auto because Illustrator does a pretty decent job of kerning. Kerning is the space between specific words. So if I write star books or star, let's do star flicks. You guys can see this little space here. You see how the F is going right into the L, and this almost looks like an A, like a weird stylized A. So maybe from a distance someone would be like, what's star AX? If we change this, if I click in here, you can go from the selection tool, you can grab this box and you can double click on it to enter the text mode. If you click on the area between these two, you can hold Alt and then use the direction keys, left and right, and adjust. Oh, I don't know when it's not showing up. There we go. For some reason it's not immediately showing up when I do stuff. So if you hold Alt and click a direction, you can change the distance between these, and then you can sort of fix in like instances where your letters are too close together. All right, so that's the type tool. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. All right, so what if you make a bunch of objects, a bunch of things, and you're super happy with all of them, but there's a bunch of them. You have some type in there, and you write things. And you're like, man, look at this piece of art. Look at that, literal perfection. And you're like, okay, I want to work on another one, like how we can move and work stuff off in space. But if you want to grab things, it's like, ugh. What if you do this? And you're like, okay, move that there, and then you accidentally move something, or you're like, oh no, I lost it. We can group things. We can make sure that they all stay together. So you can click and drag using the selection tool. Click, drag, select everything. And if you hit Control and G at the same time, it's going to group all your stuff together so it acts kind of like one. Even though these shapes are individuals, the selection tool will now treat it as one shape. I don't have to select everything anymore. It's just one deal. Now, let's say you don't want to ungroup everything, but you want to make a minor adjustment. If you go to the direct selection tool, you can go and grab individual shapes inside of this group and maneuver them and get them to be how you want it to be, and still manipulate stuff so it makes sense. Cool. And then you can go back to the selection tool, move it around. Yeah, so some of this stuff takes a little bit of playing around because there's a little bit of trying to understand when things activate. Like if you guys can see, I have right now, I've clicked on this box. If I click off of it, it'll deselect it. If I click on it, it'll select it. Okay, if I go back to the selection tool, if I click on it, individual stuff, it's going to select just the shape. But if I do it from a selection, let's say I've selected everything and I go to the direct selection tool, if I try to select an object, it's still going to keep everything selected. So you got to click off of it and then go back and click into the thing you want. Oh man, this video is so long. Okay, almost done. The last two things I want to show you are really quick, okay? They're called the Pathfinder Tool and the alignment tool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take this type here. I want to make this type a shape. Let's write something else. I'm going to write my initials first, okay? JC, Jarek Creason, okay? And I'm gonna go to the contextual tool area. I'm gonna change this to a different font, and you guys should have some interesting fonts set up in your computers. There's probably a bunch in there. I'm gonna go and click between the letters, and I'm gonna change my kerning just so I get more interesting. And then I wanna make this a shape. And the best way to make it a shape is as you have everything selected, you can see there's a bounding box here. You can see the type is here. If you go to type, you can go up to create outlines, or you can just hit Shift Control O, and it's going to turn your type into shapes. So now it's just a shape, and then I can manipulate it and do everything I did with just the square and the rectangle and the circles. I can hold Shift and have it constrained so it's nice and even. I can hold Alt and have it do it from the center, and it'll act exactly the way you expect it to. So now I have one shape, and I have another shape right here. And I kind of want to use this as like a cutter. I want to use it as a pair of scissors. I want to cut this JC out of this box, okay? Now I can do some stuff. I can make it look like it's doing that. I can go over here and make this white, and look at that. The white background is doing that for me, and I have this wonderful, not really wonderful, it's kind of boring looking thing, right? And as you can see, oh, we're still grouped, right? But I want to ungroup this. If you right click, you can go to ungroup, and then it'll act like an individual piece now. You can also select both of them, right click and go to group and get them back. You can also just hit Control G. But yeah, I made this, and it's cool. But let's say I'm like, okay, now I want to add another shape underneath, and I want to see through this, and I want to move this shape underneath this so I can have it show through. And to do that, you can right click and you can go to Arrange, and you can go to Send Backwards. And as you see, it's going to shift the pages beneath each other, send backward. But look, I'm not getting blue through this, I'm just getting the white, and I don't want that. I want this to be a cutter. I want this to cut out of this white, or this red square, okay? So how we do this is we go to this section here called Pathfinder, and as you can see, the contextual menu, the properties, has given us some options, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the thing that I want to be the cutter on top of the thing I want to be cut out of. I'm gonna hold Shift and select both of them, so now both of these objects are selected. And then if you look over here, we have some options. We have unite, so it's gonna take both of these and it's gonna unite them, so they're one shape, which I don't want. It's gonna go over here, minus front, so it's gonna take the thing in front and cut it out of the back, which is what I want. We also have intersect, where it's going to just take the areas that intersect and have them be one thing, but it's difficult to use, and we're not really gonna use it. And we also have divide or exclude. This is gonna cut everything out that's intersecting. The two big ones you're gonna use are unite and minus front. So make sure the thing you want in front to cut stuff out is above the thing you want to be cut out of. So this is here, I have them both selected. I'm gonna go to minus front, and boom. I now have a nice cutout of what I'm asking for. And if you look, everything's see-through. This is really great if you wanna have like a photo back here, like a graphic. And if we go back into the direct selection tool, we go and look, all of these vectors are there, and I can go manipulate them and adjust them, and voila. Okay, so I've done that, and let's say I've got a few different things, a few different ideas. Maybe I have, this is my first thing that I want, and I want to have a second object, or maybe a third object in there, and I want them to, oh, and if you hold Alt while you're dragging off of an object, it'll copy it for you. So let's say like I click and I want to move. If I hold Alt before I drag, it'll give a new cursor for copy, and I just click and drag and it'll copy it for me. So let's say, yeah, I've got all these objects, and I want a nice line through all this stuff, so it aligns really well. That's what this little new option here in the contextual side of the properties is. You can align things based on an edge, okay? So I want them to be aligned through these objects. So you see this little blue dot in the middle of all of our stuff? This is the exact center of our object, and it's gonna align to that exact center. So it doesn't matter what the object is, it's gonna use that as our alignment. So I'm gonna select all the things I want aligned. I'm gonna go to this little one here, which says vertical align center, and then boom, all of these are aligned in the middle. We can also do this horizontally, or vertically, I mean. So I have all of this stuff aligned up like this. I want them to be straight line, straight down. I'm gonna go to the vertical or horizontal line center. I don't know why it says horizontal, it's weird. And yeah, they're all lined with a single line through the middle of them equally. This also works for text boxes too, so that's great. Go to T, create a text box. I've got my new font in here. I can go and move, and as you can see, it's got a little blue box in the middle of it too. If I want to line all this stuff up together, horizontal or vertically, I guess, boom, it's going to line them up, and I can have everything nice and even. Cool. All right, so that's all the features that I want you guys to use for now. So let me demonstrate the process that I would like you guys to use. Okay, so we're going to use an iterative process. It's going to be very fast, and you're going to do something with simple type, simple letters, and maybe a little simple graphic. Okay, so I'm going to start by making a very simple graphic shape. I'm going to hit L for an ellipse. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt so I can get a constrained perfect circle, and I want it to start from the middle. I'm going to go ahead and leave that shape red because it doesn't matter at the moment, but I'm definitely going to go and grab some type. I'm going to drag a type box, get some type. I'm going to go find an interesting type that I like. I want, something. One thing you do too is maybe just type in your initials first. Go and select the whole box, and then you're going to go over here to the type area and just look around, and you can see there's also little previews of what this is going to be. So Constantina, that's an interesting one. I might like that one. And you're not making your final one right now, right? We're just playing. We're trying to figure out what we want. So I've got that, and I'm okay with it. And this is cool. I don't like the kerning, so I'm going to go ahead and click in between the two letters, hold Alt, and go left and directional. I'm going to shove these closer together. All right. I'm going to go ahead and outline this, so I can go to Type, Create Outlines. I'm going to resize this and hold Shift so it constrains nice and even. I'm going to put this in here and see if I like it. See if I like it centered. Not sure if I do. Maybe I can have it cut off like I did the last one. Maybe like a little part of it is sort of hanging off on the side. Maybe I'm just kind of doing something like this. Yeah, kind of up on the corner. Maybe it's a little asymmetrical, or the J is sort of more centered. Okay, maybe if I want to, I can also go ahead and change the color of this so that it does look a little bit more like the background before I decide to commit. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Let's try another one. Let's say we do, I'm going to hold Alt and click on that shape and do another one. I'm going to go JC again, but we're going to do a different font. Let's find something that's actually nice. Futura. Futura is a really nice, fun one. I'm going to hold Shift and click up on the font size so it'll really quickly make it higher. And yeah, I kind of like that. You guys can also see here, a lot of these fonts have font styles. So I have them on bold right now. I can go and check out what medium looks like, what the italic looks like, what the bold italic looks like. I like the bold italic, that's kind of cool. I'll go on that, and yeah, that's neat. I kind of like it in the middle there. And right now, remember, the colors don't matter, so I'm iterating. I'm getting an idea of what I want. I want things to be, okay? All right, so let's try a different shape. We have circles. Let's do a square, and maybe instead of a square, let's do like a diamond or something. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this, and if you hold Shift while I rotate, it's going to do it in increments. So I have like a nice little diamond. I want this to be the same color as this. Okay. One thing you guys can do too is if you hit I and you hover over another object you like, it's going to copy whatever it is that you have here. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to make it red so it's easy to see. And why don't I take this? I'm going to hold Alt, click and drag this, pull it over here. As you can see, it's behind. So I'm going to right click, arrange, bring to the front. So it sits in the front. And yeah, I kind of like where this is going so far. Now I got a really fun idea I think will look really cool. So let's try this. I'm going to outline this. Go to Type, Create Outlines. Okay, this is an object. And I'm going to cut this out of this box here. So I'm going to select both of them and hit minus front. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to get rid of the fill, and I'm going to turn the stroke up, and I'm going to change the color so it's a little more interesting. And as you can see, I got some of these points that are here. I don't really want that, so I'm going to go into the stroke area. I'm going to go to the edges and try to play with what they look like. Maybe I kind of like that. Maybe I kind of like that. Ooh, that's a little interesting. Maybe it's more interesting that way. Nope, that looks terrible. We'll go in like that. Let's go ahead and go back to miter join. That's a little bit better. Maybe the chamfered edge, and I'm going to play. I'm going to play around and do a bunch of these and see which one I like the most. All right. Remember, you guys can add a little bit of graphics too. Like, what if I had, you know, like a weird compassy looking deal? I want to have maybe, I'm going to go to L, or you can also click and hold up here, and there's a bunch of different other stuff. There's a star, there's a polygon tool. The flare tool, don't use that. It is going to wreck your FPS and everything. The ellipse tool and the rectangle tool is pretty easy to use. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt, find a little centered spot, and then I'm going to drag and pull. And you can see it's going to use the last thing that I did. And, you know, I don't know, you can make something goofy like that. It looks like a dog tag. It looks like a Scooby-Doo tag. Or you can do the same thing. And instead of having the original stroke, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. And I'm going to fill it with black instead. I'm going to resize this so it's a little smaller. I'm going to drag and hold Alt. And yeah, I'm going to play. I'm going to play and try to see what I like the most. That one's kind of cool. I don't mind that. Yeah, it's not too bad. All right, and then I'm going to group this because I want this to stay together. Control G, and voila, I got a nice simple graphic, nice and easy. Okay. Another thing you guys can do too is once you've created your graphic, you can create a text box next to it. Write out your full name. Grab the selection. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little smaller so it fits my text box. I'm going to go grab another font that I like. I'm going to keep looking around. I have a lot of experience with these fonts, so I kind of know what I want. But you know, play around, see what you like. I am going to find Neutra. The Neutra is my favorite font. You guys might not have Neutra, but I have Neutra here. It's gone bold italic right now, so I'm going to change it and go back to bold. And then I'm going to fix my kerning. There's some areas where it's a little far away. And I think that's pretty good. I'm going to just keep this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and outline this. I can hit Control Shift O. It is now a shape. Make this a little bit bigger. Grab this guy and make this a little smaller. As you can see, the outlines are changing because I'm resizing. And that's a problem, right? Because what if you want to rechange this, or what if you move this and change the size of it and it just completely destroys your design? So how do you do this? What do you do for this right now? We're going to go up to Object, and we're going to go down here to Expand Appearance. And it's going to take all of your your stroke widths, and it's going to turn them into shapes. So remember, the stroke on this object here, this is not an edge, this is not a vector, this is a vector. So this should all be just a little extension of that line. So if I grab the whole thing, Object, Expand Appearance, if I click on it now, there is a vector here. Okay, so now if I resize this whole thing, it's going to be the exact size that I'm asking it to be. It did do some of it here. It looks like maybe there's some sections that are still left over. For some reason, I don't know why I didn't grab that. Maybe I didn't select everything, but yeah, that's basically it. Okay, so there's my new. I'm going to double check. I'm going to fix that. That's annoying me. You guys, if something like that happens, if you do the direct selection tool, it'll grab all of the vectors. And you can see here, this one's not selected, so I'm going to hold Shift and click on that. And I'm going to go to Expand Appearance. And then voila, that should be better now. Yeah, now it's working just fine. Okay, get it the way I want it to be. Align it. I want maybe the center of this to align with the center of this, so I'm going to grab both of these, go to Align, have it centered even, and then I'm going to hit Control G, and there's my logo. Perfect. Okay, so this is what I'm going to want you guys to do. Okay, you guys have this class and the next class to finish this project. Don't be too grandiose. You don't have any preliminary stuff to turn in. You don't have other sections of things. You just have your final logo to turn in, and it's due on the Google Classroom in the Google Classroom page. And I just want to have you turn this in. And the way to do this is once you're done making something, so we're gonna go and we're gonna go ahead and you can do one of two things, okay? As you guys can see, I have a bunch of artboards here. I'm gonna go over to File, New, Print. I'm going to go back over here. I'm gonna grab this thing, and you can Control C, Control V, bring it into here. I'm gonna go click on the canvas, go to Edit Artboards, grab these edges, and there you go. Okay, it fits. And then I can go to File. You can do a Save As, which is going to save it as an Illustrator document. And this is editable. You can save it as a PDF as well. Or you can go up to File, Export, and you want something to be usable so that the background is invisible. So you're going to go over here to Use Artboards. You're going to change this to whatever you want to name it, logo. I'm going to do this to the desktop. Okay, and I'm going to make sure it's a PNG. And I'm going to hit Export. And it's going to automatically make it. And you guys can see here it gives you some different options. I'm going to go over to High, so I can get high PPI, or I can go to Screen and make it so it's a little more optimized. But if you look here, it's got those little checkerboards like in Photoshop when there's nothing there. You can change the background color from white to black, which is bad, and go to transparent. And we want transparent because now it's usable on lots of stuff. I can place it in different areas now. So if I saved it on my desktop, I'm going to drag it over here so you guys can see. As you look, it's transparent just like this is. But this one has been rasterized, and if we zoom in and get close, you can see we got pixels. And if we go over here, this one does not. All right. So this is your next project. You guys can do this. Have fun. Try to iterate. Have as much as you can get done. And like I said, it is due at the end of class, the Monday and Tuesday after this was assigned, which for you guys should be Wednesday and Thursday of this next week. Okay. So I miss you guys. Have a good time. And that's the end of this video. Sorry it was so long. I know there's a lot to go over, but the good news is you won't have to do very much more tutorial stuff in Illustrator after this. This is pretty much everything you're going to need to know. We'll do a little bit for the next project, but that's it. All right. Good luck. Have fun. Bye.